My name is Ratana. I'm 81 years old, and I spent most of my life waiting for something to change without understanding why it never did. I kept hoping, kept adjusting the outside, kept rearranging the pieces, thinking that if I just found the right combination, the suffering would finally soften and something new would begin. But nothing new began, not really. The faces changed, the years changed, the body changed, but inside the same weight kept showing up, the same fear, the same tightening, the same quiet conclusion that something was wrong with me, or with the world, or with both. And for a very long time I did not understand why. I thought I was unlucky. I thought I was not spiritual enough. I thought maybe peace was simply not meant for someone like me. But that was not the truth. The truth was something closer, something I could not see precisely because it was so close. It had become invisible. Maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you have been carrying something like this too. A feeling that keeps returning. A heaviness that does not fully lift no matter what you try. A pattern you cannot quite name but that you recognize in the way your chest tightens when certain things happen. In the way your mind starts running the same old program before you even have time to choose. If that sounds familiar, stay with me. Because what I finally understood about this changed everything. Not the world, not the circumstances, but the way I lived inside them. I was born in a small village in northern Thailand. Life there was simple in the way that hard things can seem simple from a distance. There was work, there was weather, there was family, there was survival. We did not sit around discussing the patterns of the mind. We did not examine our inner habits. We moved through life the way water moves through a field, following the path of least resistance, going where the ground allowed. My father was a man of few words and deep endurance. My mother gave everything she had without ever stopping to ask what she needed in return. I loved them both. But I also absorbed something from them that would shape my suffering for decades. I absorbed the idea that life is something that happens to you, and that your job is simply to withstand it. That belief carried me far. It made me disciplined. It made me tough. It made me someone who could sit in silence for hours without flinching. But it also blinded me to something very important. It blinded me to the fact that I was not only receiving life, I was also creating a version of it inside myself through patterns I had never examined. Every time uncertainty came, I tightened. Every time someone was distant, I assumed I had failed. Every time something changed, I resisted. Every time a painful memory surfaced, I gave it the whole room. These were not choices I made consciously. They were reflexes, old ones, deep ones. And because they felt so natural, I never thought to question them. When I entered the monastery, I carried all of that with me. I thought the robe would change me. I thought the silence would dissolve the noise. I thought the practice would gradually polish away everything that hurt. And in some ways, practice helped. It gave me tools. It gave me glimpses. It gave me moments where the sky inside seemed to clear, and I could breathe without the old weight pressing down. But those moments never lasted the way I wanted them to. Because underneath the practice, underneath the calm surface I was building, the same machinery was still running. The same fear, the same self-judgment, the same need for control, the same belief that I had to earn my right to peace through effort and suffering. And here is where I need to tell you something that most people resist hearing, something I resisted for years. The pattern that keeps hurting you is not only something that was done to you, it is also something you are doing, not on purpose, not with cruelty, but with a faithfulness that runs deeper than intention. You repeat it because it is familiar. You repeat it because it is the only way your nervous system knows how to respond. You repeat it because somewhere, long ago, it became the shape of your inner world and you stopped noticing it was a shape at all. You thought it was just reality. I know how uncomfortable that sounds. I know part of you might be pulling back right now, maybe thinking that I am blaming you for your own pain. I am not. Your pain is real. What happened to you is real. The wounds are real. But there is a layer beneath the wounds that very few people look at honestly. And that layer is the way you continue to relate to the wounds long after the original events have passed. The way you carry them. The way you interpret new situations through their lens. The way you build your identity around them. That layer is where the pattern lives, and that is why nothing changes. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself in a different situation but feeling exactly the same way? Different person, same rejection. Different place, same loneliness. Different year, same inner voice telling you the same old story about who you are and what you deserve. When was the last time you truly felt at peace? Or have you just been moving without noticing that the movement itself was a kind of running? I asked myself that question one evening many years ago. I was sitting alone in the temple courtyard. The day had been unremarkable. Nothing dramatic had happened, but I felt heavy, the same old heaviness. And for the first time, instead of trying to fix it or push through it or meditate it away, I just sat with it. I looked at it directly, and I asked a question I had never truly asked before. Have I been here before? Not in this exact moment, but in this exact feeling. The answer came immediately. Yes, I had been there countless times, in different decades, with different faces around me, in different seasons of life. But the inner experience was almost identical. The same contraction, the same conclusion, the same quiet belief that I was somehow not enough, the same attempt to control what could not be controlled, the same resistance to what was already happening. I was not just living through something difficult. I was reenacting something very old, something so deep in me that I had mistaken it for the ground I was standing on. That recognition did not feel like enlightenment. It felt like heartbreak, because suddenly I could see how much of my suffering had been maintained not only by life, but by my own unconscious participation. I was holding the door shut and complaining that it would not open. I was feeding the fear and wondering why it never left. I was telling the same story about myself and wondering why the story never changed. And the worst part was that I had been doing this while sincerely trying to grow, to practice, to become wiser. The pattern had been running beneath everything, including my spiritual effort. But something else happened alongside that heartbreak. A strange opening. Because if the pattern was partly mine, if I was participating in it, then I also had some power to shift it. Not all at once, not perfectly, but the possibility existed. And that possibility changed everything. Not because it erased the past, but because it meant the future did not have to be a copy of it. What I began to understand is that patterns survive through invisibility. As long as you cannot see them, they govern you completely. They choose your reactions, they filter your perceptions. They write the story before you even open your mouth. But the moment you begin to see a pattern clearly, something shifts. You do not always stop the reaction immediately, but you notice it. You feel the pull and recognize it for what it is. An old habit, not a current truth. And in that recognition, a tiny space opens. A space between the trigger and the response. And that space, small as it is the birthplace of freedom. Maybe you are beginning to see something like this in yourself right now. Maybe while listening to these words, you have felt a flicker of recognition. A moment where something inside you said, yes, I know that feeling, that tightening, that fear, that old story I keep telling myself without realizing I am the one telling it. If that is happening, do not push it away. Do not analyze it too quickly. Just let it be there. Because this kind of seeing does not need force. It needs patience. It needs the willingness to look without immediately trying to fix what you find. I also learned something that took me years to accept. Seeing the pattern does not mean judging yourself for having it. That was one of my biggest mistakes early on. I saw my patterns and immediately turned the seeing into another weapon against myself. I should have known better. I should have seen this sooner. What is wrong with me that I have been doing this for so long? But that voice was just the pattern wearing a new mask. Self-blame disguised as insight. The seeing that actually transforms is much quieter. It says simply, this is what has been happening. Not because I am broken, because I did not yet see, and now I am beginning to see. That is enough. That is the beginning. One of the things I noticed most clearly is that my pattern had a favorite disguise. It dressed itself as virtue. My need for control looked like responsibility. My fear of rejection looked like humility. My resistance to change looked like loyalty. My self-judgment looked like discipline. These disguises made the pattern very hard to see because from the outside, and even from the inside, it looked like I was doing things right. But the inner experience told a different story. I was not at peace. I was performing peace while still being driven by the same old engine. When was the last time you asked yourself whether what you call strength might actually be exhaustion wearing a brave face? Or whether what you call sensitivity might be an old wound that never learned it could heal? Or whether what you call realism might be fear that has given up hoping? These questions are not comfortable, but they are honest. And honesty is the beginning of everything that matters. With time, as I practiced this kind of seeing, the changes came. Not dramatically, not all at once, but something inside began to loosen. I caught the old reaction sooner. I questioned the familiar interpretation more quickly. I stopped building entire futures on the foundation of a single fear. I started breathing in moments where I used to tighten. I started staying present in moments where I used to leave. The pattern did not vanish completely. It still visits, but it no longer owns the house. Nothing will change until you understand this. Not because you are cursed, not because the world is against you, but because the deepest transformation happens at the level of recognition. You must see what you have been doing inside, not to blame yourself, to finally stop doing it in the dark, because what is done in the dark continues. What is seen in the light begins to change. And maybe, just maybe, the fact that you are hearing these words right now means something. Not in a mystical way, in a very human way. Maybe you have been carrying a pattern long enough. Maybe you have been hurting in the same invisible way for long enough. Maybe you are tired enough to finally look at what you have been avoiding. And if that is true, then this is not the end of something. This is the beginning. I do not know your name. I do not know your story. But I know the weight of carrying something you cannot see. And I know the relief that comes when the seeing finally begins. That relief is waiting for you too. Not somewhere far away. Not after more effort. Right here. In the willingness to look honestly at what has been repeating inside you, and to finally, gently, let the light in.